Hello and welcome to what I hope is many product reviews on the Vanus Temple YouTube channel. The first review I'm going to do is of the new Citadel technical paints. So I've got all the 6 new paints here. And this one. And I've got a selection of models that I'll be testing them on. I've got a converted plastic Necron Heavy Destroyer, which has literally just been sprayed silver. I've got a Scout from my old Angels Redemption army, as well as a bit of crossbow from a Steglen. So the first one I'm going to be testing out is the Typhus Corrosion. And this is meant to put a nice nasty grit effect. As you can hear, it sounds a bit like a wash. So it sort of looks like a thinned down poo basically. So I can notice straight away that it sort of acts like a wash, but it's kind of got grit in it. So it's seeking into the recesses. It's a bit darker than I'd like. I'd maybe try thinning it down a bit more with some airbrush thinner so it seeps more into the recesses. But it might just be because I'm doing it over silver. And the camera's not focusing. So I'll also try out the Rise of Rust, which I don't need to show because if you open it you can see it's a dry, so you can pretty much don't set down and nothing will come out. Now why this is a dry I'm not too sure, because from what I know rust tends to gather in recesses rather than on the edges, but I imagine if you thinned it down it'd work quite well, so I've just got an old dry brush. I mean, basically that's just orange but thick. This is meant to work well with this Typhus Corrosion. They're meant to be kind of used as a pair. I don't know if you can see that, but it's essentially just orange in a pot. Right, what else do we have? Blood. Blood for the Blood God. This is an interesting one because for anyone who has seen my Ogre army, I use a lot of blood effects, but I tend to use X27 clear red mixed with a tiny spot of black. This is quite it looks quite gloopy already, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes on. So I've got my Scout. Over the blade it's looking quite nice actually. It works especially well for the streak effects. But what will be interesting to see is, like the X27 Clear Red, as it dries, that kind of goes gloopy. And if you get a stipple brush or an old brush, you can kind of dab it and it makes it look like guts and bits of flesh are hanging on. So I'll leave them to dry for a second. But there's a subtle effect, it works quite well. And this is Nihilaku Oxide. Again, this sounds like a wash, which it is. Looks a bit thinner than the wash actually. So, as this is part of another model, I'm just going to test it on the back, which will be hidden. This might not be the correct colour to test it on. But yeah, it just... You see, it just goes into the recesses. You can always wipe it away. Put a bit on that. It's a bit bright, but maybe once it's dried it won't look as colourful. Alright, this is nearly dried now, so it can be sort of stippled. I think it dries a lot faster than the X27. I'm just sort of moving it around now. Yeah, I think if you put quite a bit on and then let it half dry, you should be able to stipple that in the same way. So for those of you that can't get your hands on X27, I think this will make quite a good alternative. And it doesn't smell as bad either. So let's have a look at that one again once it's dried. So yeah, it's dulled down quite a bit, so it's a lot subtle. So it's effectively like Devlin mud or Earthshade, but with grit in it. It does leave quite a nice texture. It'd be really good for like the bottom of vehicles. And the last one, which I didn't actually find a model for the test, was Nurgle's Rot. Give that a good shake. I've lost my brush now. So we'll just test this out like on this guy's base. No, that's fine. Let's find something else to test it on. Okay, I found my apothecary. This is like, it's quite thick and glossy, and I imagine it dries the same way as it looks. So it'd be really good for like goo that's leaking out of pipes, or all the gunk that leaks out of Nurgle's bellies. But once that's dried, I'll post a picture up at the end of it. And the very last one is Agrellant Earth, which is by far my favourite. So if you look at this guy's base, I posted pictures of him on the blog earlier in the week. You can see as it dries, it all cracks. and all I did there was I put some of my favourite weathering powder, and I just brushed it all over the top once it was dry, and it doesn't flake or anything, it's quite sturdy once it's dry. And I just stuck a grass tuft on top. But that gives a really cool effect. I'm a big fan of desert bases, so I can imagine myself using quite a few pots of that. So overall, I think there's a couple of these which I'd definitely get, which would be the Typhus Corrosion, Blood for the Blood God, the Grelin Earth, and Nurgle's Ross. The Oxide I can only been seen used very rarely, only for like a specific project or a piece of scenery. But I mean, that pot's going to last me forever. Rise of Dust I don't really ever see me using. I've got all the other dry paints and I never use them. I don't tend to dry brush that often. So, but this is brilliant. I think I'm going to go through hundreds of pots of that. So yes, if you go onto the website, I've got a full set of these which I'll be giving away. I've opened the Grelin Earth from one set just to test that it works, because apparently there was a bad batch, but all the rest are unopened, I hope. But if they are open, they've not been used. So yes, the link's in the description below, and good luck and congratulations to whoever wins. Thank you.